Okay, so we're going to break down 5 really uncomfortable truths about respect. And this all comes from a clinical psychologist who's been doing this for 43 years. Now, this isn't going to be about feel-good affirmations. Nope. This is about real strategies you can actually use. Let's just dive right in. Wow. That is a direct quote from her. And it kind of just stops you in your tracks, right? The whole idea here is that a lot of the time we are unintentionally setting ourselves up for the exact behavior we can't stand. And that really sets the tone for this whole thing. The psychologist is super clear. This isn't about some fluffy, feel-good nonsense or quick fixes. This is about facing some pretty tough realities about our own behavior. So right away, the focus shifts. This isn't about how to change somebody else, because let's be honest, that's impossible. It's about looking in the mirror and figuring out the patterns that we actually have control over.
All right, here we go. Principle number 1, and it's a biggie. We're all taught that explaining ourselves is, the polite or right thing to do. But a lot of the time, it's actually the root of the problem.
The psychology here is really fascinating. When we over-explain everything, what we're subconsciously communicating is, my decision isn't actually valid until you sign off on it. You are literally just handing over all your power. And this story just illustrates it perfectly. So picture this, a super successful architect, totally brilliant at her job, but whenever she's with her mom, she spends like 20 minutes defending every little choice she makes. It's like she's building a legal case for her own life. So simple, right? But oh my gosh, so hard to actually do. The advice was to just cut off the justification completely. Because I decided to. That's a complete sentence. It's not an invitation for a debate, it's a full stop. And guess what? It worked. The entire dynamic between them changed. Okay, let's move on to our second point, and you'll see how it builds on the first. If explaining is giving away your power, then silence is how you start taking it back. But it's got to be a very specific kind of silence. You see, people who are disrespectful are often just looking for a reaction. They want the argument, they feed on your frustration. When you give them nothing back, just a calm, deliberate pause, you're basically refusing to play their game. You're taking away the one thing they're trying to get from you. Think about this situation. A senior colleague, a woman, is constantly being interrupted in meetings by this younger guy who just doesn't respect her. And she tried everything, being more assertive, calling him out on it, and nothing worked. It was all just fuel for the conflict he seemed to want. So she tries the psychologist's advice. The very next time he interrupts her, she just stops talking, mid-sentence. She turns her body, looks directly at him, and just holds his gaze. For 5 full seconds. You could have heard a pin drop. The whole room got incredibly uncomfortable for him. And that was it. Problem solved. She didn't have to raise her voice, didn't have to say a single word. Her silence was way louder than any argument could ever be. She took away the reaction he was looking for, and his behavior just fizzled out. Okay, this is the third principle, and I'm not gonna lie, it's by far the hardest one. But it's also the foundation that makes all the other advice actually work. So here's the bottom line. Your fear of losing someone is the leverage they have over you. If they know deep down that you will never leave, then there's no real consequence for their disrespect. You have to have a line in the sand that you are not willing to let anyone cross. And this is where things get really personal. The psychologist admits she learned this lesson in the most painful way possible, through her own relationship with her son. Here's what happened. She was really critical of her son's wife, and when he confronted her about it, her pride just wouldn't let her admit she was wrong. So he drew a line. He stopped calling, and she hasn't heard his voice in 18 years. I mean, what a powerful, heartbreaking thing to admit. Her son chose his marriage and his own self-respect over a relationship with his mother where that respect was missing. He was willing to lose the relationship, and she says even though it shattered her, she respects him for it. This brings us right to the fourth principle, and it's a huge shift in focus. It's about getting away from the impossible task of trying to control how someone else feels and moving toward the one thing you actually can control. Look, you can spend hours, days, years arguing with someone, trying to convince them of your worth. It just doesn't work. What works? Creating a consequence. One patient used to argue for hours with her husband every time he was dismissive. The advice she got? Stop arguing. Just get up and leave the room. And this just shows you the process perfectly. Her actions, not her words, taught him the lesson. The first time she walked out, he was just stunned. The second time he got mad, he was testing the boundary. But by that third time, he'd learned. Being dismissive meant she was gone. The behavior changed because the consequence was real.
Okay, let's get to our final point. And this is the one that really brings everything home. It asks the most fundamental question of all. After doing this for 43 years, the psychologist noticed something. People who have a genuine, deep-seated self-respect, they rarely have chronic problems with being disrespected. It's not that people don't try it with them. It's that they just don't stick around for it. Their own self-worth acts like the ultimate filter. And let's be really clear here. The reasons we stay in these situations are totally real and valid. The fear of being alone, money, pressure from family, or just that little bit of hope that things will get better. These are incredibly powerful forces. The point isn't to judge them, but to recognize that they are often the chains that keep us in place, while our self-respect slowly gets chipped away. So, to wrap it all up, the key takeaways from this psychologist's incredible career are these. Your power is in not having to justify yourself. It's in using silence as a strategy. It's in knowing your own values so deeply that you'd rather be alone than disrespected. It's about focusing on your actions, not their thoughts, and ultimately, it's about building your own unshakable self-respect from the inside out. And that's the final really tough question this leaves us with. It's a choice every single one of us has to face at some point. And according to a lifetime of experience, how you answer that question, well, it will define everything.